You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio, man. Today we are here once again, and we have another show lineup for y'all. We're going to have an amazing songwriter, entrepreneur, and photographer and author, the one and only Dave Combs. He has an amazing book that we'll be talking about shortly, but go to his website. It's combsmusic.com. And first and foremost, I want to welcome Dave to the show. Say, hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Shemai. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be great.
So, man, like I mentioned moments ago, you do have a book. People can get on Amazon, anywhere you get a book. It's Touched by the Music. Kind of tell us a little bit about your life. What inspired you to play the piano?
Well, I grew up, Shemai, in a musical family. I don't know whether your parents were all musical or not, but sometimes when you're around music from the time you're born, it's just kind of in your blood, I believe. And so my mom and dad both played the piano. My father, he played the piano by ear. He couldn't read music very well, but he could sit down and play. He could just, make something up and just hear a song. He loved to play hymns and stuff, so he would tear loose on that. But he got that from his mother, my grandmother Combs. She was born in 1894 up in southwestern Virginia, and this is before electricity. Her musical instrument of choice was an old pump organ. It's one of those organs that you pump the air through it with your feet that had bellows down at the bottom, and you pump those bellows and it would push the air through the organ and make music. But she could play that old organ, and another instrument she loved to play was an autoharp. It's a stringed instrument. You can Google it. It's just an old-timey stringed instrument that you push a key and you strum it and it makes a chord, and she loved to play that. And in fact, I have her original autoharp that she gave to me when she passed away. She willed it to me, so I cherish that inheritance from my grandmother. But yeah, I was born around music and grew up around music, and I'm from Tennessee, and as you probably know, Shemaya, Tennessee is well known for its music and its musicians, and East Tennessee in particular. That's wonderful musicians come from there. Tennessee Ernie Ford, Dolly Parton's from there. Lots of musicians. And so music in our schools, in our churches, and everywhere you go was a big part of our life. And so that was my early beginnings with music, and as part of my social being anyway. And my career, I went to school at East Tennessee State University, got a degree in mathematics and physics. So I'm one of these technical people. I love technology and everything. Started out my career as a computer programmer, a technology expert, and stayed with that with the company. It was Western Electric, later became AT&T, for 22 and a half years. So I've been around technology all my life as well. But all the time at home in the evenings, on weekends, music was always a big part of my life. And when I was 33 and a half years old, I wrote a song and just made it up sitting down at the piano, and didn't have a name until 2 years later when I played that tune at the christening service of a little baby girl that my wife and I had been asked to be her godparents. So I play this tune at her christening service, and from then on, call it Rachel's Song in honor of little Rachel at her christening service. So that was my first composition, my first song. I got it recorded 3 years later in Nashville in 1986. Got it played on the radio. People that heard it on the radio fell in love with it. And I ended up getting it played on every easy listening radio station in the United States eventually. And it became the number one instrumental song in several major markets, Los Angeles and St. Louis, Atlanta, New York, Baltimore, so forth. And so I started getting fan mail, something I'd never gotten in my life. But I started getting fan mail, and people were telling me how much they were blessed by my music. And that really inspired me to go on and produce and write more music, which eventually I did, and did my first album, Rachel's Song, which you can see on my website. But then I went on and produced 14 more albums of music, and all those over the years I did about one new album a year for about 15 years. And that really propelled my career in a totally different direction. By the time in 1992, after having written my music about 12 years earlier, but by 1992 I had built my music business and the sales of my music throughout the country to the point where I was able to quit my job at AT&T, which was a nice, highly paid job, but quit my job and do my music full time, because I really felt very strongly that was what God put me on this planet to do.
And you also have a pretty interesting story with a James Bond movie. And there's a lot of fans out there who really love James Bond and those movies series. What's the story behind that situation?
Well, I like most other people, I have always loved James Bond movies, and doesn't everyone love that James Bond theme music? I mean, it's just once you hear that guitar riff that goes in there, here comes a James Bond movie. It's just a signature sound. So I won't. The story about it, the long story is in my book if you want to read the whole thing. But the bottom line is, a friend of my wife's was connected with the movie industry in Hollywood, and he loved Rachel's song, my music, and he thought that my music should be part of a movie, and I wasn't going to disagree with him. So, so he made a contact at Universal Studios, and just so happens they were about to make a new James Bond movie. And it was, the title of the movie was called The Living Daylights. You may remember seeing that movie. It's the one that has the cello player, where the weapon is in the cello case and all that. It had to do like with a symphony recording and all that. But anyway, they sent me at my wife's friend's request. They sent me the script and asked me to write some music for the movie. To submit music. Let's put it that way. To ask me to submit some theme music for the movie. Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, I got excited, and I called my buddy Stan Moon, who's a jazz guitar player, and he and I went to high school together, and he is a fabulous musician. I told him about it, and I said, well, I don't have any words, but I can write a tune. And he said, well, and I sent him a copy of the script, and so he worked up some lyrics, and I wrote a tune. And the name that we came up with for the theme song that we thought should be great for the movie was Danger in Your Love. Now, if that doesn't sound like a theme for a James Bond movie, I don't know what is. So anyway, that was the name of the song. So I wrote the music, Stan wrote the words, and his wife Carmen, we all met in the studio in Nashville, recorded the demo of the song, and then got back home, and I booked a flight to Hollywood. I said, I'm going to deliver this in person. So I flew to Hollywood, met the young man from Universal Studios, and played it for him on his cassette player, and he liked the song, and he said, well, I don't make the decisions. He said, Cubby Broccoli, who's the director of the movie, he's the one that makes all these choices. I said, okay. Well, so I left it with him and didn't know what to expect. He called me in a couple of weeks, and he said, well, Cubby, we like the music. It was a beautiful song and everything, but Cubby has decided to go in a different direction. He has decided to assign the theme music to this rock band out of Europe called a-ha. Now, I don't know whether, Shemaiah, whether you've ever heard of the rock group a-ha or not, but it was a little known group at the time. But they got the nod to do the music for the James Bond movie. But not to be outdone, though, I took that song, the music I thought was great, but I didn't need a song with the lyrics and the title of Danger in Your Love on one of my albums. It just didn't quite fit my genre of what I was trying to do. So I said, okay, I'll go back in the studio and I'll make it an instrumental recording. Took the vocal part out and played the melody on the synthesizer, made it an instrumental recording. And the title then became just Your Love. I dropped the danger of off and just called it Your Love. And so when you go to my album of Rachel's song, you'll notice that track number 3 on my album is the song Your Love. But now that you know that story, when you listen to it, See if you don't think it has kind of a James Bond sound to it. Anyway, but so that's the backstory on my James Bond movie. It was a great experience.
And that's a inside behind the scenes look, and that's what's cool about the show. You hear all these stories, and sometimes you think everything just flows perfect for some people, but this is perfect evidence that things just happen the way it's supposed to be and meant to be. And when you wrote the book, Touched by the Music, you share all these different stories, and the obvious one, Rachel's song, had changed your life. But those in-between stories of those personal steps, if you will, that you had to take to get to where you are today, what you hope that the reader will learn from your personal story with your path with music and how it just kind of shaped what you do?
Well, my real sincere desire is that my stories about my journey over 40 years with my music, and like you said, it's not a straight line. You know, you go this way and something doesn't work, you back up and you try something else. So it's a lot of trial and error and just different ventures and different ideas and different paths. But I really hope that my stories will inspire anyone that's an entrepreneur in any field of endeavor, whether it's music or anything, to apply some of the principles of an entrepreneur success. I would call them success principles. But the one principle, if you don't do anything else, is to take action. If you have an idea for something, you have an idea for a song, you have an idea for a book, you have an idea for a product or anything, take some action. You know, don't just sit and think about it all day long. Take some action, and if you don't know how to approach something, find somebody that does and partner up with them and ask them to help. Almost anything you can think of, there's somebody around somewhere that's what they do the best. They know everything there is to know about it. So surround yourself with people that support what you're doing and give you a positive feedback. And when you need help, don't be ashamed to ask and take action. That's the main thing that I would leave with people today for entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs. Stop thinking about it and go do something. You know, take some action.
We're talking to Dave Combs. You can go to his website, combsmusic.com. And speaking of action, you have a business, Combs Music Company. And kind of tell us about that, because it's one thing to put music out there and publish music, but it's another thing when you have like a brick and mortar and you're dealing with customers day to day. Tell us a little bit about that gig.
That came about through a partnership, an arrangement with a company called Sea Park Music here in Winston-Salem. They were a long-standing, been around since the 30s business in Winston-Salem. Mr. and Mrs. Sea Park were the part founders of the Winston-Salem Symphony, for example. They were part of the community. And they had a music store called Sea Park Music. And Mr. Sea Park passed away, and then years later, Mrs. Sea Park also passed away. Well, before she passed away, she had sold her store to a couple from Canada, and Drew and Marlene Parker, and they became customers of mine, basically selling my music through their store. Well, as time went on, and I needed to expand and alter my lifestyle a little bit, I needed a way to offload some of my handling of the retail and wholesale fulfillment of my music. You know, I had 15 albums and customers all over the country, and I was needing to go do some public service work in Washington, D.C. on another one of my things that I felt strongly I needed to do. So while I did that, I partnered up with Drew and Marlene Parker and in their Sea Park Music, and basically handed over to them the fulfillment aspect of Combs Music. So anytime you call my 800 number for Combs Music, you'll get one of the folks, the staff at Sea Park Music. So it's really not just solely Combs Music building, it's my music plus all the other stuff that Sea Park Music holds. So it was like anything else, you know, I needed a solution to a problem of offloading the fulfillment and the time that it would require to do that while I went to Washington, D.C. to work. And that worked out that Drew and Marlene were happy to take that, and it's been a partnership that has lasted all these years, still even to today.
And when people look at success, everyone defines it, to their own standard, if you will. For you, what was your North Star as far as keeping yourself making progress towards your goals and living a productive life?
I think it probably was constantly reinforced by the feedback that I got from my fans, the people who listened to my music and obviously had been touched by it. Over the years, Shemaiah, I have received over 50,000 letters and notes, written letters and notes from people all over the world telling me how my music has touched their lives. These are stories, some of those stories I reprinted in my book, but I've got 50,000 of those. And I mean, I could have probably printed nothing but those and it would have been a great read. But the people were pouring out their heart and soul about how my music at a certain point in their life touched them in a way that was so intimate and so meaningful that they had to sit down and write me a letter, and not just a short little letter. Some of them were many, many pages of pouring out their feelings and how the music had really touched them. There were letters from people who got married to my music, people who had children that were in the delivery room my music was playing, and people that heard my music on their honeymoon or on vacation. And then there's some of the sadder ones where people actually used my music at a loved one's funeral, who that was their favorite song, kind of thing. So these letters and notes are the you mentioned the North Star. That's kind of my anchoring position and thought when I'm thinking about what my music and what I do and what I have done, is remembering that these folks' lives have been touched in a meaningful way, and they didn't know me and I did not know them, but somehow through the grace of God, my music reached to them and made a difference in their lives.
And with the theme of your music is like relaxing instrumental, was there anything in your life that triggered you to say, you know what, this is the sweet spot, this is what I enjoy the most when it comes to certain styles of music? Was there anything that kind of persuades you to take that approach?
I think a lot of it might have had to do with the music that I grew up with in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, music that I really loved. I loved music of Henry Mancini. I loved Roger Williams. I loved just about any time I would hear a new instrumental song on the piano, whether it was the theme from Love Story or, even the rock and roll song by Gary Lewis and the Playboys called Count Me In. I don't know if you've ever heard that song or not, but it has a wonderful piano riff in it that I just love to play. But all of this music that I listened to growing up, whether it was the music of the Beatles or the Carpenters, I love Karen Carpenter's music. I mean, she and Richard just make some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard. So that is kind of, people kind of identify with the music that they grew up in the decades when they were young. And I understand that, because that's exactly what happened to me, was I think all that music that I loved is now oozed out into the music that I created. And that's just probably a natural process.
I like to think of life is related to music. It's only as good as you make it to be. And is your choice to make it good or not so good. So when you look back at your career and all the people you've been able to meet, what helped you keep building positive relationships so that way you were able to have your bigger why and leave a legacy for people?
Well, it seems that every time I would turn around, some event or some person or some group would cross my path and become a part of my life. Things that I could never have actually planned, but they just happened. Like, for example, meeting the musical group, the Letterman. You probably have heard of the Letterman. They're still performing even today. And I'd always loved them, and then they've been on tour since when I was in college, back in the late 60s and 70s. And just by chance, I had an opportunity in 1989 to perform Rachel's song and my music on the stage in St. Louis, Missouri, to a crowd of 26,000 people. I played my music for a set, and then the next group to follow me was the Letterman. And we got to know each other. We stayed at the same hotel, and we've stayed in touch over all these years. And so Tony Butala was the leader of the Letterman at that time. He's since retired. But it's just been a wonderful crossing of paths that I couldn't have predicted that or planned it even. It just happened because my music got played on the same radio station that the Letterman's music played, and the fans in St. Louis loved both of us. So they invited me and the Letterman and Don McLean and the association and George Benson to St. Louis to do a concert. And well, that was a high water mark in my life, let me tell you.
Once again, talking to our guest, Dave Combs, and you can get his book anywhere you can get a book, but it's real simple. It's Touched by the Music, how the story and music of Rachel's song can change your life. You can go to his website, real easy to remember. It's combsmusic.com. Again, that's combsmusic.com. It's been a great time having you on the show. What is a call to action outside the book? How can people keep in touch with you?
Main thing is go to my website, combsmusic.com, and there you'll find all ways to stay in touch with me. You can find links to my book, to my music, even to my email address. I'll write you back. If you write me an email, I'll write you back. But even if you just want to audibly listen to my book or my music, you can get an audible book of my book and just listen to it. And those of you that subscribe to Amazon, the Audible app, or you can get an ebook. Or if you're just want to listen to my music and you're on Spotify or Pandora or any of those streaming music platforms, just tell the platform, whatever it is, to say, hey, so-and-so, play some music by Gary Prim. Now, Gary Prim is the artist that is performing and arranged and performing my music. I'm the composer, but as you probably know, music is always published by the artist. Mm-hmm. Well, the artist is Gary Prim, and so if you want to say, play Rachel's song by Gary Prim, and it will play Rachel's song by Gary Prim. And it will be the original recording that I made in 1986. Has not been remastered or anything. It's the original recording. And you can go to my website and download and play Rachel's song for free. Right in the middle of the first page is a link that says, play Rachel's song. Click on that and you're listening to Rachel's song.
Once again, talking to Dave Combs. You can go to his website, combsmusic.com, and get his book on Amazon, anywhere you can get a book, Touched by the Music. I want to say thanks again, Dave, for taking time in your schedule to talk to I Am Refocused Radio.
Shemaiah, thank you for inviting me. It's been my pleasure.